I love how it's not on me. Hi, everyone. Movie patient. This is Film Therapy. I am your film therapist, Brienne, also known as Miss Movies. I'm not a real therapist, but I pretend to be on the internet just for you guys. And today I have a special guest. That special guest, as you may know, because it's on the title, is Miss Dani Fernandez. Hey, Dani.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm
Thank
so
you so
excited.
much.
I also play, I don't play a therapist, I play a patient. I
Okay.
feel like on on Twitter.
Well, you play
You,
my patient right now.
you and I take turns, I feel like we have like in our DMs like
Mhm.
DMing each other about that's the nice thing. I feel like I've gotten Twitter allows you like through comedy to get to know the insides of people. And when you tweet and I tweet, I'm like, this chick gets me.
Well, thanks. I feel like you get me too.
I know. I'm so glad and I decided to do this in my bedroom so that this can be like a real therapy session. And I have my support dog. She
Yes.
actually isn't, I want to get her registered just so I have an excuse to take her everywhere, but she is here. She's like passed out.
To become a support dog, do you have to go
Yeah.
through tests?
Like a rigorous, can you see her with like a little pencil, like filling out a Scantron?
Of
Um,
course.
no, I think that there's a couple like so some of my friends are like, oh, all you have to do is go on eBay and like get a vest and no one will ask you questions. And I'm like, that's really, I feel really weird doing that. So I think you can like get them registered. I think it's like $400 or $300 and you can,
Yeah.
oh, she woke up. There she is. Molly has been with me for 9 years. She's been with me through like thick and thin. She helps me with my anxiety. Like sometimes when I have anxiety attacks, I'll just like hold her and her like breathing will calm me down. So I do. It's kind of weird. Like when I got her, I didn't think of her as like a support dog and she's not like registered or anything, but she is every pet is like some type of like support pet, you know?
Sure. Absolutely. If you're
I was going to say you have children. Children are like support children.
they can be, and then it can be the opposite as well.
Yeah. Were
uh,
you
so I want to let people know. I want to let our patient audience know what this show is about, just in case this is the first time that they're joining us. Jack Shipley and Jack Cole are both in the chat right now, so hey to you guys. I'm sure you've seen the show, but for those who have not, this is a storytelling show where I ask three questions to the patient. I ask them, what is a film that inspires you? What is a film that triggers a movie or a scene from a movie that triggers a memory for you? Perhaps it's a painful memory. And what is a film that helps you through difficult times? So those are the three questions that I'm going to be asking Dani. And yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. And
Mm-hmm.
I do want to let everyone know this is very important, and I forgot to say it on the last session. I am not a therapist. Dani is not a therapist either. And I want to make sure that if you need support, if you are having a hard time, that you get to the doctor, that you call 911 or go to a hospital, because it's very important that you get the help that you need immediately if you're in need right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another thing too is just like if you're a student or someone that's in college, a lot of times they have therapists on campus, which was not something that I realized until like my junior or senior year. That people don't realize, like, because a lot of times when you're younger and when you're older, when you're me, you don't have a lot of money to spend on therapy. And there's also you can Google low cost therapy, and they will base it off of your income, which is something that I also did for years. So just a heads up out there.
That's a good resource because I didn't know that you could Google certain things that would actually help you.
Yeah. Google. I know it's Google's normally just used to ruin your life.
Right.
No, yeah, low cost therapy. I've it's normally people that are working towards, they typically when they're finishing their graduate degree, they are working towards their 200 hours. So they're people that are under a licensed therapist. And all of the ones that I worked with were phenomenal. So definitely if you have, financial struggles, but do want to pursue therapy, that's an option out there that I have used a lot.
Well,
So,
thank you for that because that's really important. I know that when I was 18, I think it was 18, I was definitely between high school and college. Like I wasn't going off to college right away. I didn't get into a 4-year immediately. I went to the junior college for a year, and I was really depressed about that. And my mom took me to a therapist, which was basically one that is studying to get their hours. And that was like, that definitely helped a lot. And
Yeah.
then I didn't have a therapist for many years until like now. So I
know
really
it.
probably should have kept that up, and I didn't. And I didn't know there were resources in college that you could just like go to the health center and see a
Right.
therapist and stuff like that.
Yeah. 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 I didn't either. I mean, a lot of times, because like in high school, you think like, oh, my guidance counselor, like I don't want to talk to them about like my eating disorder or something like that. Like they're trying to set me up with like health or speech or something, or tell me what college to go to. But yeah, there's a lot of resources. There's also now like online ones that are super cheap if you desperately need to be able to talk to somebody. I think there's like ones like this where you can like Skype and talk to someone. And even though it's not in the same room, it might work if you're like working nights or something like that.
Yeah, there was definitely one therapist that I was looking at, because you kind of like shop around for therapists, and one that I was looking at that was like, oh, we can do Skype if needed, if that's like the only way that you know we can see each other. And I was like, interesting. I didn't realize that that's kind of an option now.
I know. I was like, I try to avoid humans at all costs. This might actually work for me. Now I literally never have to leave my room.
I know. Fantastic, right? Okay, so, and you know what? Actually, that's really good for people that can't like physically like cannot get out of their house as well, that they have those resources too. So I'm glad about that. Let's get into our first question for film therapy. And our first question is, what is a film that inspires you? So Dani, what is a film that inspires you?
The film that I chose for this, and there were a couple of ones, but the one that I narrowed it down to is The Pursuit of Happiness. Yes, which was autobiographical about Chris Gardner. It was starring Will Smith, if you don't remember, and Jaden Smith. It was his film debut. Back when
so
he was, I know, he was cute and innocent. And I will say though, like I was like, why couldn't he stay like that as, you know, an actor and a person? And then, but now I just watched, I don't know if you watched The Get Down, but I watched The Get Down and I'm like, oh no, you made me like Jaden Smith again.
That's I think, not a bad thing.
I know.
You're like I'm a growing up teenager. These are awkward years. I don't even know.
He was like a junior Shia LaBeouf. His tweets were getting a little, how are our eyes real if our mirrors aren't real? Like something like that. Anyways, The Pursuit of it, that was one of his tweets. The Pursuit of Happiness, I love. It's so inspiring. So first off, it's the autobiographical story of Chris Gardner, who originally, so he was married and had a son. His marriage was falling apart. He had invested in like basically bone density scanners. I don't know if you remember, he would like carry around those huge like machines, and he wanted a better life for himself, and decided to try and do an internship to be a broker, but it was an unpaid internship. And it ended up causing him to be homeless. And so the story was basically that year of his homelessness being with his son. And everything about it, like just his intelligence, his perseverance, his pulling, I'm sure some people watching can relate, but like the idea of being able to pull yourself out of homelessness, or like the idea of being able to even take risks to put yourself in that situation because you want a better life. The movie starts out by him saying, I didn't really know my father, and it was important for me that my son knew his father. And so he wanted not only a better life for himself, but his son as well. And the whole movie is just so heartbreaking. Like the scene where he and his son can't make it. A lot of the shelters still today are mostly for women and children, and him being a single father, because his marriage fell apart, him being a single father with his child, not really being able to get into any of these shelters with him, having to lock himself away in like a subway restroom, and I just remember that scene so much, like having someone trying to like break the door down and him like just holding his son and being in there. And I don't know. I find it super inspiring. He ended up being this, at the end of the movie, he ended up at the end of his internship, they ended up offering him a full-time position, and he ended up being like a multimillionaire. He went on to 2020, which is what made The Pursuit of Happiness. Like when they asked him about his story, and then he realized that this was a story that needed to be told. It's one that I feel like a lot of people in our industry or in the creative industry can relate to. I know my friend Trayvon Free, he was at the Daily Show and now is over on Bill Simmons' new show. But I listened to an episode of The Champs, that's Neil Brennan's podcast, and he said he had $7 left in his bank account and was about to be evicted from his apartment when he got the call to be on the Daily Show. And I think there's a similar story of Mike from Mike and Molly. I forgot the actor's name now, but like he had a similar story where he had like, I think like 22 cents left in his bank account. And just, I find that super inspiring. When I moved out here, I slept on a blow up mattress in an apartment that smelled like cat piss. I would ration off tuna from a can. Like I would make sections of it and like, okay, this is how much I'm having for breakfast. And like, this is how much I'm having for lunch. And I would like go all the way to Pasadena to work nights, working the door. And then I would nanny in the mornings. And then I would work at 24-Hour Fitness. And it was just like, I don't know, having to
burn the candle at both ends.
Burning the candle at both ends. And I think people, if you had just looked at Chris Gardner today and been like, oh, he's a multimillionaire, like, or you'd look at Trayvon and you're like, oh, he is a writer on Daily Show and Bill Simmons, like, what does he know about struggling? You don't know the backstory of a lot of these people that gave up, their lives and had to really take huge risks to be the people that they are today. So I find that super inspiring. And just the idea that he was able to pull himself out of homelessness, which is like the hardest thing ever, because you have such limited resources. Like it just feels like something that you will never get out of. Right. Sorry, that was like my huge rambling.
It's great. I love it. That's what you're supposed to do. I'm just supposed to like guide you into that rant. That's my job. But yes, for The Pursuit of Happiness, as soon as you said that, the first thing that came to my mind is the scene where he locks himself in with his son. And I saw that before I had kids. It's something I probably should revisit now that I have kids, because now I know how much harder that struggle is. Because when you see it and you haven't had children, you really don't know how hard it is to be a parent and how hard it is to like take care of another person. And I, as a mom, would think like of all the dangers that could come to my child because I have them in a shelter with people. And that would be the hardest part for me. Is I probably wouldn't sleep ever. And he didn't really sleep either when he was trying to fix, his broken items on his own with his limited resources. So I just feel like that would I would be overcome with that worry of what's going to happen to my child. Is someone going to harm them while I'm here?
Yeah. Well, and also like the title of it is like Pursuit of Happiness. It's not like the pursuit of money or the pursuit of success necessarily, that he just wasn't happy. And I definitely relate to that personally, that my life before I decided to be a creative person, I just was so miserable. And it's like, I can stay in this life and continue, at the rate that I'm going and just be miserable, or I can spend these years and be ridiculously poor and struggling, but maybe have a glimmer of hope that I might be happy one day. And that goes for anyone that's in, a loveless marriage or is unhappy with their job. That goes for anything where it's like, yeah, I could just keep waiting this out and treading water, or I could take this risk and it will really, really hurt, but it might eventually pay off. And so I did really like that, and I love his story. So that was one of my my big ones.
And you brought up the idea that you have been a struggling artist. You are a struggling artist, I would say, right? And I mean, all artists are struggling, But it's interesting. I think that people don't really realize that. I saw a friend's marriage dissolve because, her husband was an actor and
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be an actor, and that was what made him happy, and she
Mm-hmm.
wanted more. She wanted other things out of that marriage, and it just ultimately couldn't work because he needed to create art. And I think that's something that people don't always understand, that an artist has to create in
Right.
order to be who they are and be happy.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. My ex, because I was married and now I'm divorced, he wanted a family so badly that so I'm 28 now. We got married when I was 24, divorced when I was 25. He's already remarried. We're both the same age. Like, to me, that's crazy, and that's his own life. But like, he's already remarried, and probably they live in a house, and like he's moving on with his life and probably going to have kids. Like, he wants that life so badly, and that's a life that I just realized is not my priority, and that's okay. And at least I live in a world where it is okay to put your career first, or to be, to put yourself, entirely into your art. And I'm dating someone that also feels the same way. So at least that's, I think, what has helped me in my relationships is dating people that put their career first. That sounds crazy, and I think that's crazy to some people, and they don't quite get it. And it's like, oh, don't you want to get married? And it's like, no, I did that. And my boyfriend now is like, we're both like, no, our career, like, nothing is going to distract us, and that's why we work well together, because we respect that. And it's like, if I don't see you, that's fine. It would actually make me more nervous if I saw him a lot, because then I'm like, what's going on? Are you like, you're not working? Well, also, it's like, are you not getting work? Like, do you know what I mean? It's we both need to be working on our craft. So yeah, but yeah, I think it's a huge risk, and I do like that they titled it The Pursuit of Happiness. And it's something that I feel like a lot of artists and especially comedy people feel like we will never achieve, and maybe we won't. It's like a running joke that we will never be happy. But at least we all get it together. Like, I think a lot of people see comedians and comedy writers and stuff, and they think that we're like, oh, when we get together, it's just like the happiest, most fun. And it's like, yeah, it is. But also, we are like the most depressed, cynical, bitter people, but we get each other. Like, we get that about each other. So
we are a family.
Yeah, the clowns are sad. The sad clowns.
Well, let's get into our second question, which is, what is
Okay.
a film or a scene from a movie that triggers a memory for you, and perhaps that's a painful memory, or maybe it's
Yes.
not. I don't know.
No, it is. I just you know me, and I had to throw a Disney movie in here because this is your show, and you and I are like Disney. I'm still trying to get us on like a show where it's like just a Disney like trivia off of like Meavers. Mark is like, oh, when are we gonna like get you and I? And I'm like, oh man, that would be like a real matchup. I chose, so a painful memory. This is what I can remember is the first film that I saw in theaters. I'm sure I might have seen a film before this, but this is the first one that I remember sitting in the theater seeing. And it is The Lion King. And so if you can imagine being a child, I think I was turning 6 at the time. And I had, I was there in the theater with my family and seeing that scene when Mufasa is trampled by the herd, the stampede, and he's dying, and Simba is there. And as like a 6-year-old, and having that be like my first film, and having so many different emotions all at once. One, I would say that Disney largely favors the like father relationship. Like, there's growing up, and I largely my dog, I largely grew up with 90s Disney movies, and so you have Belle and her dad, and Jasmine and her dad, and even in the 80s, like with Ariel and her dad. And I didn't have a good relationship with my dad, and I still don't have a good relationship with my dad. He's like blocked from every element of my life, which is largely why I'm in therapy and totally okay with talking about it. I've talked about it in my stand-up, and I'm writing a pilot right now, and he's in it. I had to change his name so I don't get sued. But for me, being a kid and just like seeing this scene, and it's so, I feel a billion different things about it. Even when I go back and I watch it, I can never watch the scene without crying, which, by the way, if you watch a scene without crying, you're not human. Just the whole, like, his dad, oh man. But yeah, I have conflicted feelings because it's like, I didn't have a relationship with my dad. I didn't really have a good relationship with my dad. And so for me, like, the idea of my dad not being around is like not a huge deal. It also is like, some of my friends lost their dads, like they've lost their dads to cancer and heart attacks. And here my dad is, and he was very abusive. He was very, since this is a therapy show, I'm okay saying this. He was violent. He would throw things into the wall and punch holes in the wall. He would cheat on my mom. He was just a very, to me, what I would call when I was little, a bad man. And so I'm very conflicted with this scene, and with Disney's portrayal of dads in general, just because there's a scene in The Little Mermaid, and I try not to cry whenever it comes on, but there's a scene in Little Mermaid when she's marrying Prince Eric and they're about to go off together. And one final moment, she turns and King Triton is, staying in the sea. He's staying in the ocean. Here's his baby girl who's going off into the land. She's going off to the castle, and they hug and she says, "I love you, Daddy." And I'm like, I didn't have that. Like, I didn't get to have that. And it's such like a thing. I don't know, when you're growing up as a little girl, not understanding why you didn't have this like relationship with your father that it seems like these characters that you looked up to did. And so it's just so conflicted for me every time I see that scene, and just being a little kid and not knowing, like, I didn't want my dad around, So like when I was little,
even at, I think you were not, did you say you were 9?
I was like 6.
Okay.
When I was
6, you didn't want your dad around.
When I was in 4th grade, I told my mom to divorce my dad. A 4th grader telling my mom to divorce my dad. But like, little kids have intuition. Like, why would I say that, And it was so weird that I felt like I was a bad person for thinking these thoughts about my dad, or thinking like that should be my dad instead of like these good dads should get to live. And my dad, like, why is my dad alive, when he's a bad person? And these are still thoughts that I have, that I talk to my therapist about, that it's like, yeah, these are deep, dark thoughts. How could you wish death, or how could you wish harm upon somebody? But it's also like, this person harmed me so much growing up that like, I don't know. Yeah, it's still a conflicted feeling, but a lot of those Disney movies are, where it's like, I will never have that. I will never have that relationship ever.
So then your relationship with your mom, does that connect for you for, in the comments we have about Dumbo and his mom?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh, yes.
So does that give you all the feels? Like,
yes, it does.
This more.
Do you cry every time you watch that Baby Mine? Like, just listening to it. I know, just listening to the Baby Mine, and she like has her little like trunk out and is like rocking him. Yes, my mom and I have a great relationship. But just like from a therapy standpoint, things that I've had to talk to my therapist about is like, my mom also stayed with my dad for 25 years. So me being abused as a child, it's like, well, you kind of allowed this to happen. So that is something I've had to like, I love my mom. I see her as a savior. I see her as like a strong person in my life, a strong woman, but I'm sure she had 3 kids. Like, in her mind, it's like, I'm not going to leave this man and be homeless. She's not going to pursue her happiness herself and like leave this man and have 3 kids and be a single mom of 3 kids. So instead she stayed in an abusive relationship for 25 years so that we could have a roof over our head and things like that, in exchange for having to deal with emotional, and sometimes physical abuse. So it's very conflicting.
That is really hard. And do you think there was a fear of her, like for her to try and leave earlier?
I think that when she had my older brother and my dad started cheating on her, I think immediately it was like, what am I going to do? I just married this man. Again, it was in the 80s when divorce wasn't really, yeah, people got divorced, but also my family is hardcore Catholic. Like my mom's Irish Catholic and my dad is Latin Catholic. So they're extreme Catholic. They're like the trinity of Catholicism. And so divorce was not an option. Even in 2012 or something, when my parents finally got divorced, it was very hard for them to get divorced in the Catholic Church. Even today, they treated my mom like an outcast when she tried to leave my dad after 25 years of being very loyal to him. So I think that to her, it wasn't, she was raised in the 60s and 70s when you are the, right-hand person to your husband and you do what your husband says, and you don't back talk to your husband. And so she kind of just stayed along with him. I did not inherit any of that. It is good, but a part of me is a lot like my dad. My dad is Latin. So I inherited a lot of his feisty fieriness. Yeah, but it is a conflicted thing watching some of those Disney movies, which I love, but it's just like, I never got to have that childhood or that feeling that other people do.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you the final question.
Okay.
Is what's a film that helps you through difficult times?
Yes. My film that I love, that I've been tweeting about because I recently rediscovered it and loved it throughout college and high school, is Something's Gotta Give. I love this film. I love Nancy Meyers films. Like, for some reason, this is like the stereotypical cliche, like, girl, put on this film when you're feeling bad about yourself. But I do not care. This film is so fantastic. So it's Diane Keaton. She discovers that her young daughter, is dating a man that is her age, which is Jack Nicholson. And they kind of fall for each other. And it's set in the Hamptons. Her house is like, can I Airbnb this place? Because it is amazing. I remember they asked her, like, what is her favorite set, like, that she's ever had, or house that she's filmed in? And she said this Something's Gotta Give house, because like the kitchen, like, just go back and watch it. But all of Nancy Meyers films have homes like that. And I think that's because they look like Nancy Meyers homes.
Of course.
Like, it's
the bride. I mean,
right. It's complicated. They all are so beautiful and like perfectly set.
Her outfit. I love that she's in like a white turtleneck.
I love her. She is so herself. So she's a divorcee who kind of just feels like she's not ever really going to find love again. And she uses her pain in her writing. And whenever I get stuck, I love watching this, because I love the fact that no matter what happens to me, I can use it. Like, that's the only power I feel like I have over depression, over my anxiety, and over like the abuse and things that I've had in my life, is that I can use it in my writing. Now I do have a pilot where I'm writing about my dad. I have an autoimmune disorder, which I was so bitter about and had to go into therapy for. Probably need to go back into therapy for, just because I thought it was so unfair that I have my body attacking itself and other people don't have to have that. I know a lot of people do, like thousands and thousands of people do, but not everyone in my industry does. So it's like, oh, I'm going on auditions and these girls don't have autoimmune disorders and their hair isn't falling out and their eyebrows aren't falling out and their thyroid isn't enlarged and they aren't gaining 20 pounds in a year. Like, why do I have to deal with this? And you get really bitter about it. But Diane Keaton uses her pain, her heartbreak, her age, like just everything that people throw against her, like in her writing. And it's so hilarious. The writing in it is beautiful. It's so simplistic. It's so like just human nature. She and Jack Nicholson are a perfect like pair together. Keanu Reeves is in it too. And he's Keanu Reeves. But I love it. I love watching it.
I'm not sure that I've seen the entire film, but maybe it's like one of those movies where like It's been on so many times in the background that I'm not sure I've actually sat down and paid attention to it, but I know the basic plot line going through, and like
Yes.
now I'm like, I don't even remember how Keanu Reeves comes into it. But I feel like maybe he kind of like flirts with Diane Keaton, but I can't remember.
He's the doctor. So Jack Nicholson gets a heart attack while he is trying or about to have sex. And then Keanu Reeves ends up being his doctor, who kind of falls for Diane Keaton, who is a very well-known playwright who Jack Nicholson kind of like just throws away because of her age. He doesn't date any woman that's over 30. And then which is actually very true for Jack Nicholson, but
sounds very true for just the industry.
Right. George Clooney and all of them. But there's something about Diane Keaton that you're like, this woman, like she just glows, and it makes you feel like it doesn't matter what age you are. She just has this spark. And so anytime that I feel like, you know, pushed aside or something like that, I watch this film and it's like she works her magic. And yeah, it's you should go back. You would love it. Like it's such a good film. And the writing again is so hilarious. It's just adorable. And I love this.
I'm going to put it on my list of things that I need to stream. I hope it's streaming.
It's on Netflix.
Oh, yes. Score. So I'm totally going to watch it then.
It's so great. You can just like, it reminds me, did you see The Holiday?
Yes.
Because that's another one where it just makes you feel good. Like it's just like the music and the candles and like it just has like a good vibe. And I know that even men, I know it's like kind of seen as like a chick flick, but even guys would enjoy it, especially with Jack in it and Keanu.
Yes, they got to have those polls for them. Like, what can we do to get a man to watch this movie with his girlfriend?
Yeah, I just love how Jack Nicholson is like, no, I do, like he just he completely turns in the film. But it makes me feel good in there in the Hamptons, yeah, and you get to for a small part live there with them, and live on the beach. And there's a scene where like a rainstorm comes in on the beach, and you're like, I just want to live in this world with you guys. So, yeah.
Well,
it does make me feel good.
You're
welcome.
I'm gonna make sure that I watch it.
You will love it.
Without a phone nearby.
I've been doing that so Luke Cage that just came out. I was like, this show deserves my like undivided attention. And I've been watching it in here. I don't typically like watching things all the time in my bedroom. I like watching them like in my living room. You know how they said like don't have electronics in your bedroom,
right?
I try to be one of those people, but lately I've been like turning the lights down low, especially for Luke Cage. I'm like, this man turning the lights down low. And just like every night, Molly and my dog, will watch like 2 or 3 episodes, and I won't look at my phone, and I'll just like be entranced in it. So
I need to continue with it. I started the first episode, got halfway through, and then my daughter came into the room because she woke up, and I was like, great, now I got to turn this off.
Yeah.
And go take her back and do all the things that a mom does.
I would say midway it gets heated. So I know people are conflicted about towards the end, and I'm getting towards the end, but halfway through, yeah. But yeah, I think more things deserve our undivided attention. I realize that's the thing that I do love about movie theaters is that people have to turn their phone off, because I feel like a lot of people, even like with Netflix, I don't think that they're actually watching all of this sometimes. Right. Like 30 minutes in, what are you going to do? You're probably going to pick up your phone at some point. You're probably going to check, your like a text or how your tweet did or whatever. And at least that's what I do. And so I have to like actively put my phone away to make sure that like the people that take the time to create these things, that I'm giving it my actual attention.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
It's difficult, but it's necessary.
I just want people to do that for my work whenever it comes out. So
Well, thank you so much, Dani, for being on this session of film therapy. Where can the other patients find you?
Patience. You can find me at Ms. Dani Fernandez and on Twitter and Instagram, and then also on Geek and Sundry Anime Gateways, which comes out every Friday. And then I have a podcast. If you're a Dragon Ball Z fan, or if you're not and just like hearing comedians talk about Dragon Ball Z, I have a DBZ podcast with Iffy Wadiwe called Krillin' It. That's on iTunes. Yeah.
Nice. You guys can find me on Twitter at Miss Movies and weekly pretty much here on Hit or Miss Movies. So there you go. Thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate you. We hope you have a good week, and we will see you at our next film therapy session.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye.